In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace the parking brake shoes on this Ford Excursion. Located behind your rear rotors, we'll have to take the brakes apart, so let's get started. Use a 21mm socket, remove all 8 lug nuts, and then pull the wheel off. With an 18mm socket, let's remove the caliper and bracket assembly from the rear axle. This is the top bolt. Put your socket on the top bolt, break it free, and take it off. With it off, thread it back in a couple turns so that it can hold the caliper bracket on while we remove the lower. With the lower taken off, you can now remove the top one fully. Pull the caliper right off, and you don't want it hanging on the brake hose like this, so I'm actually going to tuck it right behind the rotor up here. Now you can remove your rotor. Mine is new, so it's not stuck, but if yours is stuck on here, of course make sure the parking brake shoes aren't getting stuck on the rotor on the inside, but usually it gets stuck on the hub, so tap it right here with a hammer in between the studs. That should break it free, and then slide it off. On the shoe, between the hub surface and the shoe itself, you'll see a little clip. It's this right here. This is the locking clip. I'm going to try to spin it so that that pin lines up with the cutout, and that, once it lines up, will allow us to remove the shoe. Well, not yet, but at least it'll be unlocked. You can also reach for the pin from the back side of that backing shield. We just want to spin it. There we go, until it pops out. It's okay if that stays in here for now. If you can't take it out, we'll get it out once we take the rest of the shoe out. Now you're going to want to do the same to the other side shoe. At the bottom, you'll see a spring. Behind the spring is going to be your adjuster. I'm going to get the adjuster out first, put a pry bar in here, and pry this apart. This will spread the adjuster open, and should allow it to come out from the shoes. Okay, I was able to separate the adjuster. It's fairly seized on here, so I'm going to have to tap it with a hammer. There's part of our adjuster. The other part is stuck right up here on the other shoe. Oh, the spring fell down. That's all right. That was going to be our next step. Pull the rest of the adjuster out. There it is. At this point, you would remove the spring as well. But usually when you pull the adjuster out and the shoe's closed, the spring falls out. Up top, there are 2 springs. One you can see on the front, which is narrower and longer. The one on the back is wider and thicker. All you can see is the little end of the hook. We have to unhook that spring, and I'm going to do that with a pry bar and try to pry it away. We're going to do that so that we eliminate the pressure of that rear spring, and then we'll be able to spread these shoes apart and pop them out of their pivot point at the top. Okay, looks like I got that one. I was just prying on it with the pry bar. Oh, it's not fully released though. You can still see it there in that slot. So I'm going to try to stick my pry bar in on the back. Just try to push it off the rest of the way. Sometimes a flathead screwdriver right through here can help. All right, so now we only have 1 spring, which is a little bit more difficult to remove. So we're just going to spread the pads apart, or the shoes, and remove them. There will be less pressure this way. And you can pull on the shoes. Use a pry bar if needed to help you remove these. I got the rear spring out. This is the thicker of the two. All right, got this out. And there's the shoes, separate them. We'll put this spring aside, and there are the old parking brake shoes. It's time for some cleaning, and I know this backing shield is in, well, not the best condition, but it's still reusable. So we're going to use a wire brush, clean all of the contact points that the shoes go on. So right here at the top, on the sides, there are always some flat spots that you want to clean, and the bottom, of course. At the top, this parking brake pivot lever is supposed to wobble back and forth and move freely. If yours does not, spray it with some rust penetrant, work it, and make sure it does move freely. Ours is good to go. I just gave it a little bit of rust penetrant to help it out in the long term, but other than that, you want to make sure that this operates, otherwise your parking brake will not function right. With that said, let's take a wire brush and get to cleaning. I'll do the same on the other side. Let's add some grease or silicone paste. If you use silicone paste, make sure it's rated for brakes. That's what I'm using. I'm going to add it to every contact point on the parking brake shoe area between the shoes and the backing shield, or their pivot point, or mounting point I should say, at the top, starting with this right here on both sides. Doing this will just prevent unwanted noises and will prevent rust corrosion from building up and seizing the shoes on. I know the backing shield up here is not great, but we're going to add a little bit here, a little bit towards the bottom, basically everywhere where the shoes are going to contact. We'll do the same on the other side. So grab the new shoes, and they're all the same, all four. Doesn't matter which one you put on the front, left, right, they're all the same. You want this double cutout to be at the top, because this is going to be your lever pivot point, and this is the anchor point. You want these two rectangular holes to have the two springs hooking onto them. And speaking of those springs, we're going to use the thicker spring and put that on first. Hook it onto the back with the shorter hook facing towards the front of the vehicle, just like this. We're working on the passenger side, by the way, so the driver's side may be different. It just depends on your application, on your differential, and you're going to want to just follow what's already there. And for me, once again, passenger side, I'm going to have the longer hook on the rear shoe. But I can't hook this on yet and put it on because this spring being so thick, it's not going to slide in. So what we're going to do is slide this in like that, and then with a screwdriver, I'm going to push this hook out that way. Holding it there, I'm going to put this shoe on and hook them in like this from the back. And I'm explaining this now because it's going to be quite difficult to see, honestly, even while doing it. So just be very careful not to have your screwdriver slip while you're pushing, and hook them on. Let's slide this shoe in with the spring. I'm not going to seat it into its spot. I'm just going to place it here, and then holding the spring, I'm going to put my screwdriver through it. With this shoe in position, I have my screwdriver pushing right here. I'm going to put this shoe over and very carefully try to hook this in. Okay, I have a pick pushing it through from the other side, and that allowed me to let go of my screwdriver, and then I got my screwdriver back in here, pushed it through, and it just hooked on. Let's get this shoe seated in place. Use a pry bar, push it in its spot. We're going to have to pull this pivot lever out a little bit. All right, so the shoe is now seated right up here. Of course, it's not secured in any other place, so it's going to want to move around. However, both shoes are in, and they are connected with that rear spring at the top. So now we can put the front spring on as long as everything is seated where it needs to be. Let's install the other spring at the top that goes in the front. I'm just going to hook it on to one side, and this one's going to be easier to see, but still somewhat tricky to get to. when it comes time to connecting it, at least on the second side. So with this hooked in, I'm going to have to use some sort of a prying tool to push that in its spot. And that's in. It's time to put in the adjuster at the bottom. Sometimes these get stuck and they seize. Mine is actually good. I can spin the star wheel and everything. So what I'm going to do is spin it out about halfway, and then I'm going to add some grease to the threads. You can use brake grease or some silicone paste. If you use silicone paste, make sure it's rated for brakes. You don't have to apply too much, just a thin coating so it doesn't get stuck in the future. And then turn it back over the grease that you just put on. That way it works its way into the threads. And just put the rest on the end of it here. There we go. Take the cap, put it over. We're going to go ahead and bottom this out all the way. You want to start with it all the way de-adjusted. I'm also going to put some of the silicone paste that's left on my brush in here, and on the other end in here. This is going to prevent these from getting stuck on the parking brake shoes in the future. Stick a pry bar in here to spread the shoes apart so we can install the adjuster. I'm installing it the way it came out, with the star wheel towards the front of the vehicle, just like this. All right, put that in there. Make sure things stay centered. Make sure this is bottomed out. There's actually a little bit of space here where it kind of just free floats, but it's bottomed out. Next, let's put on the spring. Hook it onto one end, and this is a very weak spring, so you can pull it, hook it onto the other end. It's time to put the pin through, and what I'm going to do is stick the pin through the backing shield and the shoe, and then on the other side we're going to put this clip on, line everything up. It's only going to go through both ends one way, and then either turn the clip 90 degrees or turn the pin 90 degrees to lock it in. It's going to be somewhat tough to see back here, which is why I wanted to demonstrate that prior. At this point, I'm going to try and push this and try to turn either the clip or the pin, like I said before. All right. All right. Now it's fully locked in. Do the same to the other shoe. Next, it's time to clean up the hub so that the rotor has a nice flat mounting surface to sit on, and then we would coat it with some anti-seize so it doesn't corrode in the future. All of that has already been done here, so the hub is clean and it's even coated with anti-seize, so I can skip that. The back of the rotor also needs to get cleaned up. Mine is new, but if yours is used and has some rust buildup here, clean that off. Take the rotor and slide it over. When you put it on, what you want to listen for is the brake shoes just barely touching as the rotor is spinning. It might also be useful to apply the parking brake a few times so that you can seat them fully, and as you spin this around, which the truck would have to be in neutral for, by the way, so make sure you're on a flat level surface and it's not going to roll anywhere, you're going to want them to just barely touch. No drag, no resistance, just a slight sound of the shoes touching. Okay. As I move it back and forth, you can hear that slight rubbing. That's all you want, but no resistance. This is perfect. If you need to adjust them, you would either push them out with the adjuster on the bottom or bring them in if they're too far adjusted. Now take the caliper and put it back over the rotor. Have your two bolts ready to start them in so that you can secure the caliper. With one started, put the other one in as well. Snug them both up. The torque for these bolts is between 74 and 100 foot-pounds. I'm going to go for 100. It's on the higher end of the range. That's one. And the second one. And there you have it. Let's put the wheel on. Let's get the wheel back on. Reinstall all 8 lug nuts, bottom them out in a cross pattern so we can seat the wheel correctly, and also in a cross pattern, torque them to 148 foot-pounds. Now 148 foot-pounds in a cross pattern, here we go. There we go, double check them if you want. Take it for a road test.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.